All have your texts? Good. So we can we start? Oh, the Zoom is already going? Sort of. Just talk. Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight, a few days before Passover. I hope that we will learn some new things tonight, because the Passover story is super important in Christianity, very important in Islam, and of course we know the Jewish version. And the idea that I want to try today, hopefully it will be successful, is to start reading the Exodus story the way it appears in Islamic sources. Okay? You didn't think about it. I did not think about it until yesterday. No, and you'll understand why, because the Islamic sources tell the Exodus story very closely to the way it is written in the Bible, with some very few differences. So that can also be a nice game for us to detect when the Muslim version is different from the Jewish one. Okay, but that's a very good way, in my opinion, to refresh our memory of the Exodus story. So we'll read it through the Muslim sources, and then we will compare the way Christianity understands the entire Exodus story to the way Judaism does, and this is completely different. So far, so good? Okay, there's a lot to read here. Yeah, that's the only problem with Zoom. I just don't feel like reading so much. And I have the mic. If you don't have the mic, the people on Zoom cannot, so I have another mic. Who wants to read a little bit? Can you catch, Kara? Thank you. Let's just pass it for people who want, and then we will see how it works. If I stop you in the middle, please don't hate me. There is a reason for that.
I won't hate you.
Okay, so let's just look at the beginning, the story of Prophet Musa. Who is Musa?
Where is that?
Some of you have one, some of you have two. So the story of Prophet Musa and the Exodus of Bani Israel.
Okay,
You don't have it? What do you mean? No? No?
Yeah, we have it.
Who doesn't have that?
We have an extra here.
Okay, do you have it? Okay, so Prophet Musa, who is Musa? Moses, or Moshe in Hebrew, Musa in Arabic, is one of the most important prophets in the Quran. Okay, one of the most important people in the Muslim tradition. Is also very important for Christianity. Our Moses, Musa, yes, they're all the same person. We all tell the story more or less differently. I mean, the same way. The Muslims have slightly different version, which is interesting. Christianity, as I'll say, tells it the very same way that the Jews tell it, but they have a completely different interpretation of the story. Okay, because for them, when Christians read it, it's basically a story more about Jesus than about Moses. Okay, so Moses is a foreshadow for Jesus. But for Islam, it's the same story that we have. They attribute more or less the same importance and even have most of the same details of the story. They call Moses Musa, and when you go to Arab places and a lot in Israel, many places are known as something Musa, Nabi Musa, just a lot of Musa, because again, Moses was super important to them. So A. Carroll is reading. Oh.
The Shadow of Tyranny, Life Under Pharaoh.
What do you think is Pharaoh? Pharaoh. Okay?
In the land of Egypt, the descendants of prophet Jacob, known as the Beni Israel, lived under the crushing rule of a powerful and arrogant king, Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was not merely a political tyrant, he was steeped in disbelief, proclaiming himself the supreme Lord over his people. I am your Lord Most High, Quran 79:24. He subjected the Beni Israel to harsh slavery, humiliation, and a brutal policy born of fear, the systematic killing of their newborn sons while sparing their daughters. This decree was often linked in Islamic tradition to prophecies or dreams foretelling that a male child from Beni Israel would rise to challenge his dominion.
Okay, so that's more or less the way the Exodus story begins in the Bible. A new Pharaoh came to power, didn't remember the contribution of Joseph, right? The first Jew, or the first Hebrew in Egypt, who was a financial genius, and decided to see the Jews not as a good contributing group within Egypt, but as a potential threat. So far, so good. And at the end, it's not in our Bible, but it is in some versions of the Islamic text, is that he had a dream. And in the dream, he saw one of the children of Israel rising against him. It's interesting because it's also in the Midrash. Okay, the Midrash is the Jewish interpretation of the Bible. So it's a very famous Midrash that Pharaoh had a dream that a young child of the Hebrews will gain power and rebel against him. And that's why the Midrash tells us he killed all the male. Okay, because when you think about it, if you really don't want the group of, we'll call them Jews, even though it's inaccurate, there were no Jews at that time, there were Israelites, but we'll use it interchangeably. If you want to eliminate the group, you need to kill the women. Because technically speaking, one male can have many babies with many women. So if you want to be effective, kill the women, right? That's the question that our ancestors asked. Why killing the men? And the answer is that he had the dream that his rival will come out of, will be a Jewish male. Read another one or two, whatever.
A mother's faith, a prophet's cradle. Into this terrifying reality, Musa was born. His mother feared deeply for his life, but Allah, the most merciful, inspired her heart with a plan and a promise. Nurse him, but when you fear for him, cast him into the river, and do not fear or grieve. Verily, we shall bring him back to you and make him one of the messengers. That's in the Quran 28.
You don't have to read it. Nobody's going to check it today.
Yeah. No
Look
fact
it up
checking?
at the house.
With profound trust in Allah, she placed her infant son in a basket or ark and set it adrift on the Nile. She instructed Musa's sister to follow its path discreetly.
Thank you. Can you detect a little difference from the Bible? In the Bible, God was not part of it. Moses' mother, who has a name in our Bible, Yocheved, she came up with the plan. She gets the credit. In the Muslim version, it was Allah. Allah is just God. So don't think that Allah is the Muslim God. Okay? So if we call God Adonai, Elohim, Yahweh, they use the word Allah, but it's God. Okay? In any case, so they attribute it to God, who told her what to do. The Bible gives tons of credit to women in the beginning of the book of Exodus. Don't get used to it in the rest of the Torah. But the Exodus, the beginning, a lot of credit to women. Okay?
Divine will guided the basket directly to the banks near Pharaoh's palace. It was discovered by the royal household. While Pharaoh's initial impulse might have been aligned with his cruel decree, his wife Isaiah, a woman of deep hidden faith, revered in Islam as one of the greatest women, saw the child and her heart filled with love. She pleaded for Pharaoh, a comfort of the eye for me and for you. Kill him not, perhaps he may be of benefit to us, or we may adopt him as a son. And so, unaware of the destiny unfolding, they took him in. Musa, the future liberator of Bani Israel, began his life ironically protected within the very fortress of their oppressor.
Thank you. How it is different from the Jewish version, from the biblical version?
The daughter came.
So it's Pharaoh's daughter who found him, right? It's not that the river went to the palace, but the Pharaoh's daughter went to bathe in the Nile, in the river, found a nice boy in a basket and took him home. She gets a credit, and here in the Muslim version is Pharaoh's wife. Okay? So we can spend tons of time asking why, but who is Pharaoh's sister, by the way? Miriam, right? And Maryam is also a very important figure for the Muslims. So it's not that they didn't like her and took her out, but who knows? Audrey.
In the Bible version, Pharaoh doesn't have any say in this part.
Correct. In the biblical version, the Pharaoh doesn't say anything. We just read that his daughter took the child and raised him as her own. That's all we get. Moses' sister is Miriam. If I said it incorrectly, I apologize. We know nothing of Pharaoh's family from the Bible. There is a midrash, and it's only a midrash, that gave his daughter a name, Batya, but that's a midrash. It never appears in the Torah itself. Okay? Yet we don't know of any sisters or anything. Okay, so it's interesting, the small differences.
Yeah, you can read.
Allah's plan continued to unfold. The baby Musa refused to feed from any of the Egyptian wet nurses brought to him. His sister, observing nearby, cleverly suggested, "Shall I guide you to a household who will nurture him for you and be sincere to him?" She led them to her own mother. Thus, Musa was miraculously reunited with his birth mother, who could now nurse and care for him openly, employed by the palace, her heart filled with relief and gratitude as Allah fulfilled the first part of his promise.
Is that in the Bible or not?
No.
Yes, it is. Read your Bible, people. It is, and it's what, but of course what we read here in the whole paragraph in the Bible, it's one line, it's one verse. But the whole idea was not only that she did it openly, she also got paid to take care of her own son. Like in a very liberal country somewhere in Scandinavia or something, that you get a paid leave. But yeah, it's in the Bible too, so they didn't make it up.
Awakening conflict and flight. Musa grew to manhood in the palace, endowed by Allah with strength and wisdom. Though raised as royalty, he was aware of his origins and the suffering of his people.
Okay, not in the Bible.
No.
We don't know that he was aware. Sorry.
One day he entered the city and witnessed a fight between an Israelite man and an Egyptian oppressor. The Israelite cried out for Musa for help. Intervening, Musa struck the Egyptian with his fist, intending perhaps only to restrain him, but the blow proved fatal. Immediately, filled with remorse, recognizing he had acted rashly before assessing the situation fully, Musa prayed, "My Lord, indeed I have wronged myself, so forgive me." And Allah forgave him. However, the next day, the same Israelite was involved in another dispute. When Musa approached, intending to admonish him, the man, fearing Musa might strike him too, inadvertently revealed Musa's involvement in the previous day's death. News spread quickly. A man came rushing from the city outskirts, warning Musa, "O Musa, verily the chiefs are taking counsel against you to kill you, so escape. Truly, I am one of the sincere advisors to you." Fearing for his life, Musa fled Egypt, praying to Allah for deliverance from the wrongdoing people.
Thank you. What did they add here that is not in the version of the Bible? It is there. What is not there is that Moses felt remorse. Not only that he didn't, the Bible tells us that after he killed the Egyptian, he looked around, realized that there were no witnesses, and he buried him in the sand. So there is no prayer to God, no forgiveness. Later on, some of the commentators, when we learned that Moses will be severely punished and would not make it to the promised land, the version in the book of Numbers tells us that God told him, talk to the rock. Moses struck the rock. But some acute commentators said, no, his sin was that he murdered the person. Because even though he saw the Egyptian taskmaster beating up a slave, it's still not a cause for killing him. He could have intervened in other places, but in the Torah, it's very clearly, you need a court, you need the process. You don't just kill a person and then hide him. Okay, but the rest is accurate, and there was no warning. Nobody came to Moses and warned him, but he understood that he was in trouble because he realized that people knew that he killed an Egyptian taskmaster. But think about it today. It's like killing a cop, right? They're killing, but all the movies I watch, when you kill a cop, that's the worst because they'll never let it go, right? So killing an Egyptian taskmaster was serious, even though your stepfather or sort of a father was the Pharaoh. Yes.
Where it says, quote, "My Lord, indeed I have wronged myself, so forgive me," as opposed to I've wronged somebody else and murdered them.
Yeah, so you're asking about the version of the Quran, why he said, I wronged myself and not I wronged you, because you, God, told me not to kill, thou shalt not kill. I don't have an answer. I don't have, and frankly, when I read it, I didn't even look at it because I just, not in the Bible, and missed that interesting part. But we can come up with different interpretations. But let's continue with this lovely version of the story.
His journey led him eastward, eventually reaching the land of Madian. Exhausted, he sat down near a well where he saw shepherds watering their flocks. He noticed two women holding back their flock, unable to approach the crowded well. Ever just, Musa inquired about their situation. They explained they waited until the shepherds left, as their father was a very old man. Musa, despite his fatigue and fugitive status, stepped forward and drew water for their entire flock, a task requiring considerable strength. The two women returned home earlier than usual and told their father, often identified in Islamic tradition as the righteous prophet Shu'ab, though the Quran simply calls him a venerable old man, about the strong...
Jethro in the Bible.
Anyone? Okay.
Yeah, please, sorry.
About the strong, kind stranger. Intrigued, the father sent one of his daughters back to shyly invite Musa to their home. After hearing Musa's story, the man offered him safety and proposed that Musa work for him for 8 years with an option for 10 in return for marrying one of his daughters. Musa agreed, completed the longer term, married, and found peace and stability in Madian for several years.
Thank you. So the biblical version has more daughters to the prophet or the special priest of Midian, Jethro, and Moses didn't just help them to move the large stone that covered the well. They were harassed by some guys, by men, and he fought. So he was the real deal. And then they came home, and as it said here, they told their father the story, and they said, oh, bring him here. The Bible does not say anything about 8 years or 10 years to work for him. Where did the Quran take this idea from? Rachel and Jacob. Okay, so when Jacob arrived in Mesopotamia, he saw this beautiful girl who happened to be his cousin, and that's the story tells that they needed more muscle, more people to roll the stone. But Jacob, his love to Rachel made him superhuman, and he did it by himself. Okay, so it seems like the Quran here took the story of Jacob and the story of Moses and put them together. No big deal, but again, I personally find it fascinating to see how they had, maybe they even had a different version of our Bible. Or sometimes we know that some people who wrote things didn't have the text in front of them. They relied on their memory, right? And I never understood that it was a big deal until I got older, and I said, oh, relying on your memory is not a foolproof. But I read a big article about Maimonides' misquotes of the Bible, because Maimonides was the smartest Jew ever. But we all make this kind of mistakes, especially as we get older, and we think that we remember exactly the line, and we can even argue with people. So he didn't even bother to check the text and misquoted it. Okay, so I don't know what the reason. It doesn't change the story, but interesting nonetheless.
Having fulfilled his term, Musa departed from Madian with his family, intending to return towards Egypt. As they traveled through the desolate landscape near the sacred mountain Tur, or Sinai, Musa perceived a fire burning in the distance on the mountainside. He told his family to wait while he went towards it, hoping to get directions or bring back a burning brand for warmth.
Okay, in the Bible, he was by himself. There was no family with him. He was alone with the flock.
As he approached, he found himself in the sacred valley known as Tuwa. A voice suddenly called out from a tree on the blessed spot, O Musa, verily I am your Lord. So remove your sandals. Indeed, you are in the sacred valley of Tuwa, and I have chosen you. So listen to that which is inspired. Verily I am Allah. There is no God but me. So worship me and establish prayer for my remembrance.
The last line, not in the Bible. Okay, how did God introduce God's self to Moses?
The burning bush.
But what was God's name? What did he say? That's the Yahweh, which means I am who I am, or I will be who I will be.
Right.
Okay, so that was the conversation, not about worship me at that point or anything like that. Okay, but the rest is true. Remove your shoes because you're stepping on a holy ground.
This was the moment of divine commission. Allah spoke directly to Musa, appointing him as his prophet and messenger. He tasked Musa with a monumental mission. Go to Fir'aun, for he has transgressed all bounds, and call to him to worship the one true God and to release the children of Israel from bondage.
Okay, so you can see what was the real emphasis of the Islamic text. The worshiping of one God. They cared about oppression and slavery, but that was secondary. What made the Pharaoh evil, and the reason he had to be punished and learn, was worshiping many gods. Okay? So in our Bible, in the Bible, the problem was that Pharaoh enslaved the Jews. Here, again, bad, but the main thing was that he worshipped many gods. And we'll see it will come back in a different way. Okay, so God in the Bible never expected Moses to demand of the Pharaoh to become a monotheistic ruler.
Musa, overwhelmed and awed, expressed his fears. His speech impediment, unloose the knot from my tongue that they may understand my speech. And the fact that he was a fugitive who had killed one of Pharaoh's men, he pleaded for support, asking Allah to appoint his eloquent brother Harun, Aaron, as a minister and fellow prophet to strengthen him. Allah, in his infinite mercy, granted both requests, reassuring Musa, "You are granted your request, O Musa, and we will strengthen your arm through your brother and give you both authority." When I was a kid, there was a story that Moses had a speech impediment because when he was a child, because of Pharaoh's dream, he put before Moses a hot coal and, I don't know, a crown or a scepter as a test for Moses, and Moses chose. God pushed Moses towards the coal, put it in his mouth, and he had.
Okay, so Sai is reciting a nice midrash that the reason, again, it's not in the Torah, it's not even hinted in the Torah, but it's a nice children's story that explains why Moses had speech impediment. Remember the dream that I had mentioned before, that the Pharaoh had a dream that an Israelite will rebel against him. So he wanted to test this new Jewish boy, and he put coal, a piece of burning coal, and some other symbols of a king, a scepter and a crown, and wanted to know if baby Moses would choose the crown, it means that he is the bad guy from the dream, so he would kill him. Moses, like any baby, wanted to take the crown or the scepter, all these gold and shiny stones, but then an angel came and moved his hand. So Moses took the coal, saved his life, but paid with a speech impediment. So this is, thank you for mentioning this beautiful midrash, not in the Torah, not in the Bible, but very nice nonetheless. In the biblical version of the story, Moses did not ask God to invite his brother as a co-leader. Moses just complained that he is not a person who can speak in public. He doesn't have this gift. And so God said, okay, I'm going to bring Aaron. He will be your mouth. That's the biblical verse. Okay? I will put the words in his mouth and he will speak on your behalf. Here they change it a little bit. Muslims also like Aaron a lot. Harun is a very important prophet in Islam, and you will see later how they even change a story to make him more important, or at least to take part of the guilt from him. Good, let's continue. I don't know who is reading, but somebody has the mic.
As undeniable proof for fear one, Allah bestowed upon Musa two powerful miracles. His staff, when thrown down, would transform into a visibly moving serpent, and his hand, when drawn from his bosom, would emerge radiant white light, free of any disease, a dazzling sign.
Okay, so we have two miracles. The first miracle, by the way, it's not such a miracle. I have not seen it myself. I read about it. They do it a lot in Egypt and in other places. There's a way to take a snake and to press on a pressure point, and then it looks like a stick. It cannot move. And then you release it, and it jumps like a snake. So it's a trick that I would never try. But those of you who are fascinated by these things may want to look it up.
Armed with divine authority, guidance, and miracles, Musa and Harun stood before the mighty Pharaoh. They delivered their message clearly. We are messengers from the Lord of the worlds, so let the children of Israel go with us. Pharaoh reacted with mockery and disdain, reminding Musa of his upbringing in the palace. Did we not raise you among us as a child? And the killing he had committed. He arrogantly dismissed their call to worship Allah and demanded proof of their claims. Musa threw down his staff, and it instantly became a menacing serpent. He drew his hand from his cloak, and it shone with brilliant white light for all to see.
Thank you. Except of the last line of the miracles, nothing is mentioned in the Bible. Moses never had a conversation with the Pharaoh about the past. The Pharaoh never seemed to have recognized Moses as the young child who grew up in the palace. This is the Quran version, not the Bible version. And of course, Moses never talked to the Pharaoh about worshiping one God. Okay, not a thing.
Blinded by arrogance, Pharaoh and his council accused Musa of being merely a skilled magician, aiming to drive them out of their land. Pharaoh decided to counter magic with magic, summoning the most proficient sorcerers from across Egypt for a grand contest on a designated festival day. On the appointed day, a vast crowd gathered. The magicians, confident in their craft, asked Musa if he would cast first or they should. Musa told them to proceed. They cast down their ropes and staffs, and through powerful illusions made them appear as writhing snakes, captivating the onlookers. For a moment, Musa felt a flicker of apprehension, but Allah instantly reassured him. Fear not, surely you will be the superior. Throw that which is in your right hand. It will swallow up that which they have made. That which they have made is only a magician's trick, and the magician will never be successful, no matter whatever amount of skill he may attain.
More or less the same as in the Bible or not? Yeah, yes. In the beginning, the magicians of the Pharaoh were able to do everything that Moses did. The more impressive trick of Moses was that his snake was better than the others and ate the magician's snake. But almost all these magic tricks and the plagues later on are known phenomenon in Egypt. Okay, for example, the blood in the river. Often when there are floods, the soil of the delta is the area by the Nile, is red, very, very red. And when the floods push the soil into the river, it looks like it's blood, not like it's water. Okay? Frogs are very common there. Lice and other things are quite common. I couldn't hear, I'm sorry.
What about the diseased hand and the white hand?
It's a story that happened to Moses and happened to his sister Miriam later on. So one of the magic tricks in the Bible is that your hand becomes completely white, like you have leprosy. They use the word leprosy, even now it's not accurate in modern medical terms. And then it takes normally months to heal from leprosy, if at all, but then it goes away very quickly. So that's the trick, that becomes white and then normal color. Whoever wants to read is...
Enraged by this public humiliation and defiance, Pharaoh accused them of conspiring with Musa beforehand. He threatened them with brutal torture, amputation of hands and feet on opposite sides, followed by crucifixion crucifixion on palm trunks to make an example of them. Yet their newfound faith remained unshaken.
Not even a hint in the Bible for these threats. Okay, that from other places.
They replied, "Never will we prefer you over what has come to us of clear proofs and over he who created us. So decree whatever you desire to decree. You can only decree regarding this worldly life. Verily, we have believed in our Lord, that he may forgive us our sins and the magic to which you compelled us, and Allah is better and more abiding." They faced their martyrdom with courage, submitting to Allah.
Not a hint in the Bible. Okay? But it's interesting because this text, or the Quran, was written, let's say around 650, 670, right? And these biblical accounts are, it's hard to tell exactly when they were written, but they're at least 1,000 years, 1,200 years minimum older than the Quran, right? Because some of the texts in the Bible are even 1,600 years older than the Quran. Okay, so it's interesting to see that they needed, probably for their audience, to make more sense of it, to make some changes. Keep reading, please.
Plagues, promises, and perfidy. Despite the defeat of his magicians and the clear signs, Pharaoh's heart remained hardened. He refused to submit to Allah or release the Bani Israel. Consequently, Allah sent a sequence of devastating plagues upon Pharaoh and his people as further warnings and punishment explicitly listed in the Quran: a flood or widespread death, pestilence, swarms of locusts, devouring crops, infestation of lice or crawling insects, plagues of frogs inundating the land, and the water turning to blood.
Okay, so the Quran never talks about 10 plagues and does not list 10. There are less. So they use it more like examples of escalating punishments, but not the way it's in the Bible, right? Each time the plagues get worse and worse, and then the number 10 is very important in the Bible, not in the Quran.
Each time a calamity struck, the Egyptians would suffer terribly. In desperation, they would beseech Musa, "O Musa, invoke your Lord for us according to his promise to you. If you remove the punishment from us, we will surely believe in you, and we will surely send the children of Israel away with you." Musa would pray, and Allah would lift the affliction. But as soon as the relief came, Pharaoh and his chiefs would break their promise, returning to their disbelief and oppression. This cycle repeated, demonstrating their perceived stubbornness.
Okay, just like in our version? Yes.
Does anybody?
The night of departure, Exodus. After all warnings were exhausted and Pharaoh's tyranny persisted, Allah commanded Musa to lead the Bani Israel out of Egypt. Under the cloak of darkness, Musa mobilized his people, who had perhaps gathered their few belongings and began their historic departure. When morning dawned, Pharaoh discovered their escape. Consumed by fury, he mustered his formidable army, chariots, soldiers, commanders, and set off in hot pursuit, determined to crush the fleeing Israelites.
The Bani Israel marched until they reached the edge of the vast Red Sea. Looking ahead, they saw the impassable water. Looking behind, they saw the dust clouds of Pharaoh's rapidly approaching army. Trapped, panic swept through them. "We are sure to be overtaken," they cried out to Musa. But Musa's faith was absolute. He calmly reassured them, "Nay, verily, with me is my Lord, he will guide me. At the critical moment, Allah revealed the solution. Strike the sea with your staff.
Okay, looks the same, more or less? Yeah, not bad.
Musa struck the water as commanded by the power of Allah. A breathtaking miracle occurred. The sea parted violently, creating a dry corridor through the seabed. The water stood like massive walls on either side. Musa led the Bnei Israel into this path, and they hurried across towards the opposite shore. Seeing the path, Pharaoh, in his utter arrogance, did not hesitate. He ordered his entire army to charge into the corridor between the walls of water. They pursued the Israelites, confident of capturing them. Once the last of the Bnei Israel had safely reached the other side, and while Pharaoh and his entire army were still within the sea passage, Allah commanded the waters to return. The towering walls of water collapsed inward with immense force, engulfing Pharaoh and his legions. In his final moments, as the water closed over him, Pharaoh choked out, "I believe that there is no deity except him in whom the children of Israel believe, and I am one of the Muslims." There is no deity except him in the world. Who am I looking to?
Yeah, so
Right.
this passage, is that in the Bible? No.
No.
So they added that Pharaoh just did tshuva, right? He repented and immediately discovered that there is only one God, and Allah or God is the only God. And Muslim, literally, as they explain here, something that we always need to remember, means those who submit to God. Okay, so literally, it's not just a nation, it's anyone who submits to God, who believes in God, can be called Muslim. Okay, so this is the repentance of the Pharaoh as he was dying.
But this desperate, last-minute declaration made only when facing inescapable doom was too late. Allah replied, "Now? And indeed you had disobeyed before and were of the corruptors. So today we will save you in body, that you may be to those who succeed you a sign."
Okay, so God was not very impressed with the last second repentance. Said, had you wanted to repent, you should have done it earlier, not when you face death. So I'm not going to keep you alive, but I'm going to keep your body intact, as you will see in a second.
His repentance was rejected, but body was preserved, washed ashore as a stark warning for the future generations against arrogance and disbelief.
Okay, because the idea is that all the Egyptians disappeared in the water, but only the body of the Pharaoh was washed out. I don't know why it's supposed to be comforting, but I guess it's...
Saved from their enemy, the Bnei Israel began their journey through the harsh, barren landscape of the Sinai Peninsula. Freedom, however, brought new challenges. Accustomed to life in Egypt, even under oppression, they soon grew weary of the desert hardships.
Correct? The same as in the Bible? Yes,
Yeah.
they didn't stop complaining.
All right. When they complained of hunger, Allah, through his boundless grace, sent down heavenly provisions. Al-Manna described as a sweet, white, dew-like substance that appeared on the ground each morning, and Al-Salwa, flocks of quail that would descend easy to catch. This miraculous food sustained them daily.
True? Or in the Bible? Yes, quail. I knew that would be tricky. So we all know about the manna, right? Every morning they got out of their tent and found manna that lasted for 1 day. They were not allowed to accumulate more than they needed. On Friday, they had a double portion because God didn't want them to gather food on Shabbat. Okay? So they got a double portion, and that's one of the references for 2 challahs on Shabbat. Okay? We have 2 challahs on Friday night because of the manna that God doubled up the portion of the manna. Quail did not arrive all the time, but there was one episode of some serious complaining when they said, we are sick and tired of this manna thing, we want meat. So God provided them with quail. Okay, so it's sort of accurate. A diet of manna and quail. No?
So when they cried out for water, Allah commanded Musa to strike a specific rock with his staff. Upon doing so, 12 springs gushed forth from the rock, providing distinct water sources for each of the 12 tribes of Bani Israel, preventing disputes. Despite these continuous, undeniable miracles, deliverance from fear won, daily sustenance, abundant water from a stone, the Bani Israel often displayed impatience, ingratitude, and a tendency to complain. They longed for the foods they remembered in Egypt, garlic, onions, lentils, testing Musa's patience and showing weakness in their faith.
Accurate? 100%. You know what? Let's just go to the last one. Let's just skip, because I want to get to Christianity and to devote more than 6 minutes. But, oh, yeah. Yeah, it's too good. No, I'm sorry. I take it back. Let's just finish it. And
All right. In the course of their journey, Allah summoned Musa to ascend Mount Tur for a sacred appointment. This meeting was set for 30 nights, later extended by Allah to 40 nights.
the Bible never said that it was extended. 40 from the beginning, right? Itinerary for...
During this time, Allah would bestow upon Musa the divine law inscribed on sacred tablets, containing guidance and commandments for the Bani Israel. Before ascending the mountain, Musa entrusted the leadership of his people to his brother Harun. He instructed him, "Take my place among my people, act righteously, and do not follow the way of the corruptors." However, during Musa's prolonged absence on the mount, the faith of many among the Bani Israel wavered. Their impatience grew. Seeing this vulnerability, a man from among them named Samiri instigated a great act of disbelief. He collected gold jewelry from the people. Then, using some form of craft, or perhaps, as mentioned in the Quran, incorporating dust, he claimed was from the track of the angelic messenger, he fashioned the gold into the statue of a calf. Miraculously, or through trickery, the statue emitted a lowing sound.
Okay, so here we have a character that does not appear in the Bible, as Samiri. Who fashioned the golden calf in the Bible? A specific man. Aaron, correct. Okay, it was Aaron who made the golden calf. Here, the Muslims, like Aaron, they don't want to attribute to him this huge sin of making a god, right? It's a violation of the first commandment. So they brought in a new kind of a person, sort of a satanic person, a Samiri. And what he did in some versions was that the angel Gabriel had a horse. So during the time when they crossed the Sea of Reeds, Samiri stole some dust from the legs of the horse, and they they have some magic power because they came from the angel Gabriel. And when he threw this magical dust into the gold, the melting gold, it created the golden calf. Okay, so this is one of the versions of the Islam of, because when you think about it, you throw some gold into something, golden calf, right? And in other versions, they specifically talk about the calf or the cow because it was worshipped in Egypt. Okay, so that they write a lot against worshiping idols. Let's take it home.
As Mary presented this idol to the people, proclaiming deceitfully, "This is your God and the God of Musa," but he has forgotten it here. Tragically, a significant number of the B'nai Israel, forgetting Allah's recent salvation miracles, was seduced by this falsehood and began to worship the golden calf. Haran desperately tried to stop them.
Okay, again, not true. It was Harun or Aaron who looked at the calf and said, "This is your God, or Israel," and he never resisted. Probably was really afraid of a rebellion, okay, but he still did it. And here they completely changed his role as the one who tried to stop them.
He pleaded, "O my people, you're only being tested by it, and verily your Lord is the most beneficent, so follow me and obey my order." But the people, caught up in the fervor of idolatry, rejected his counsel. They threatened him and declared, "We will by no means cease to worship it until Musa returns to us." Haran found himself largely powerless, fearing that using force against the calf worshippers would lead to violence and irreparable division among the B'nai Israel before Musa's return, a dilemma he will later explain to his brother. And so while Musa was communing with Allah on the sacred mount, receiving divine guidance for his people, a large portion of those same people had descended into the darkness of shirk, worshiping a golden calf below. This sets the stage for Musa's return and the profound shock and anger he would feel upon witnessing their betrayal.
Okay, thank you. So I hope that you like that. The first time I studied the Exodus story in the Quran, I found it fascinating. I was quite surprised that the differences were minor. They reduced or eliminated the fault of Aaron, but most of the other things, or they said that the Pharaoh repented the last minute, but I think nothing is really substantial here. They tell the story more or less as it is, right? That's my reading of it. And they include all the details. So if you read it fast without knowing that it's in the Quran, I think you can easily think that, just a version of the story. So this is Islam, and I mentioned it at least 10 times in the past. I don't know how many months we've been meeting here. That's why Jews always found it easier to live with Muslims. Because, we share the story. More or less, it's 92% identical. So it was easier. And today, when we think about the current situation, it's hard to believe that we're so close to them. It takes place this, back then they didn't have a sense of history the way we do it today. So they didn't say now it's the year 625 and that took place at 1200 BCE. But yeah, more or less before.
Do they celebrate this at the same time?
They don't celebrate it. Okay. Oh, that's a good thing. I took it. They don't. It's just one of the stories of the origin of the belief in one God, of monotheism. That's why they like a lot of the biblical stories that illustrate how faith in one God came to be. And the first prophet was Abraham, right? So Ibrahim was the first prophet, and then Musa and Harun and others. Okay, they use the term that I have mentioned before, the Muslims. They are the youngest child, and they were humble enough to take the good stuff from Judaism and Christianity. Of course, saying that Muhammad is the best prophet and the whole thing, but still. Let's look at Christianity for a very short time. I just want to explain a very important theological principle in Christianity, and then you can have fun with the table that I have provided to you. So you see here comparison of Jewish and Christian perspective of Exodus. So for Christians, the Jewish Bible, or as they prefer to call it, the Old Testament, is part of their Bible. Okay? So they read the Exodus story from the very same source that we read it, the Bible. Okay? If you go to the church and borrow a Bible, open Exodus, more or less, not more or less, it's the same story. Okay? But they read it on a completely different level. If you need to learn one thing tonight, is the term typology. Typology in Christianity means that when they read the Old Testament, they don't doubt the historicity of the stories, but they look at them as a foreshadow of the life of Jesus. Okay? And I will demonstrate and make sense of it. Okay, so the story of the Exodus, which is very important, extremely important in Christianity, for Jews, it's a historical moment, extremely important. And why is that? It celebrates the concept, the idea of liberty. This is the time that the people of Israel merged as a people, as a nation. Before that, they were a large family, right? It started with Abraham and then Jacob had 12 sons, became 12 tribes, still a family, large, a clan. But the Exodus story was the time in which we became a nation, a people. We're now the people of Israel. We're not just the family of Jacob. Okay? Very important. God had a covenant with us. Because 40 days, 39 days after the people of Israel crossed the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea, they were already at the foot of Mount Sinai receiving the Torah, which is the covenant with God. That's where the whole idea of the Jews as the chosen people came from. God told them, God intervened in history to help these special people, said, I'm your God, you suffered enough. I'm going to free you from slavery. I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. And these are the conditions for this covenant, for this agreement. Okay, so for the Jews, it's a very important historical moment that shaped our identity. That's why Saturday night is so important and has been so important all these years, because this is our story. It's not really the story of Abraham, it's all nice, but this is our national story. This is the core of our identity. The whole idea of fighting for freedom, of speaking truth to power, of not being afraid of the bad Pharaoh, the idea that God is on our side. So this is more or less the Jewish emphasis of the Exodus story. When Christians read it, they said, yeah, all that is true, but not as important as the Jews think. Because Moses, as important as he was, is only a foreshadow of Jesus. So if Moses, look at it, for example, the slavery of Egypt that we were fighting against, and it is literal slavery, right? We were working physically hard. Do you see this table that we have here? So if for the Jews is literal historical national enslavement, for foundational memory of suffering, oppression, and the need for God's redemption. All that is in the Haggadah, in the story. Look what it is for Christians. It's a literal enslavement, but also, or much more important, understood typologically as representing humanity's universal slavery to sin, death, and forces opposed to God. So we were, in the Jewish tradition, we're slaves to Pharaoh. The Christian looks at the Pharaoh as a symbol of sin. Okay, and what is the sin? Is the disobedience of Adam and Eve. Okay? So the slavery is the slavery to sin, is more of a spiritual slavery. And we are talking, the Jews talk about the physical slavery. Okay, I'll show you more of that, and it will hopefully will be clearer. So for Jews, if you see Moses, the greatest prophet, leader, lawgiver, and liberator chosen by God, uniquely received and transmitted the Torah, central figure in Jewish history. He was just a man, right? He was a prophet, very important. He was a leader, he was a man, etc. But for the Christians, he was a great prophet, leader, and all, but also seen as a significant type of foreshadowing of Jesus Christ. Okay, so Moses is Jesus, and I have here a whole list of why they think that Moses is Jesus. For example, they both were born during a threat for infant lives. For Pharaoh wanted to kill all the Jewish baby boys, and in Jesus' life it was King Herod, right? Herod the Great, who wanted to kill the baby boys. Unusual upbringing. Moses was raised in the Pharaoh's home, and we all know the story of Jesus, the miraculous birth, etc. Appointed deliverer. Both of them were appointed to deliver people. Moses to deliver the Israelites from slavery, and Jesus to deliver humanity from spiritual slavery, slavery to sin. Both of them were mediators between God and the people, right? Both of them led people from bondage. In the case of Moses, physical bondage. In the case of Christianity, or the way Christianity looks at it, leads believers out of sin and death. Okay? Both of them, let's talk about, okay, does it start to make sense or not yet? So, I know it's very confusing, but it's crucial if you want to understand Christianity. They don't say that the Exodus didn't happen. They affirm everything about the Exodus the way it's in the Bible. They just say, yes, that's important, but not super important. It's just a foreshadow of what would happen in the future. And the important thing is what would happen in the future. Moses was important, but only a foreshadow of Jesus, who was the ultimate redeemer. So Moses was a little redeemer, released the children of Israel from slavery, but Jesus released them from slavery to sin. Jesus has the key to give them eternal life. Okay, that's the ultimate redemption. Pharaoh, in the Jewish case here, is a historical tyrant, embodied resistant to God's will, and we know the story. And for them, for Christians, he symbolizes Satan, the power of sin. Okay? The 10 plagues, which are quite fascinating. So we know the 10 plagues, the ways that Moses convinced the Pharaoh ultimately to let the people go. For Christians, God's judgment demonstrating God's power over creation and false deities, also seen as showing the severity of rejecting God and the powerlessness of evil. Did I include it here for example? Oh, yeah, it's later on. Passover and the Passover lamb. When we use how do you call Passover in Hebrew? What's the name? Pesach. What is Pesach? Pesach is the name of the sacrifice. Okay? Pesach, if you pay close attention when you read the Haggadah, Pesach is the sacrifice, is the paschal sacrifice, the paschal lamb. We don't sacrifice anymore in the past 2,000 years or so. Okay? But the most important act of the original Passover was sacrificing the paschal lamb. Okay? So for the Jews, Korban Pesach, or in the temple's time, now the Seder, commemorates God sparing Israelites' firstborn via lamb's blood. Remember, before God killed the Egyptian firstborn, he told them, slaughter the lamb, and before you roast it, smear some of the blood on the doorpost of your house, a mezuzah. Okay, mezuzah is connected to it. So when the angel of death came to kill the firstborn, whenever, I want to say he, but they saw blood on the doorpost, oh, that's a Jewish home, we are passing over it. Okay, that's the idea of Pesach, is to pass over that house, not killing the firstborn in this house. Okay, and the symbol was the blood of the paschal lamb. For Christians, it's beautiful. A crucial type, Jesus is identified as the ultimate Passover lamb, whose sacrificial death delivers believers from eternal death. The Last Supper institute the communion, the whole idea. So for Christians, if the Paschal Lamb for Jews was a one-time event that saved their firstborn, for Jesus, he himself, by dying in order to expiate for the original sin, to restore the relationship between humans and God, Jesus is described in the New Testament many times as God's Lamb. Okay, so the whole idea. And when you think about the communion, right, the Last Supper was sort of a Passover Seder, okay, because we know that it was, at least most of the sources of the New Testament tells us that the Last Supper took place on the first day of Passover, and that's when Jesus bring the bread that was a matzah, right? Because there is no way in the world that Jesus would eat real bread, okay? And he said, this is my body, and then at the end, he gives them the blood, okay? This is my blood by which I redeemed humanity. I redeemed humankind. I expiated, I atoned for the sin, and I opened for you a path to God. Okay, so from the very story of Passover, the Paschal Lamb, the Christian developed a very serious theology here. Okay? So it's not that they denied the whole idea that we tell the Paschal Lamb, and yeah, that happened, but that's not as important as Jesus as the Paschal Lamb. Okay? And the Last Supper, which Christians reenact each time when they perform the communion or the Eucharist, right? When they eat the bread and drink the wine. Okay? I'll just skip a little bit because of time, of course. Crossing of the Red Sea, another example for typology. So we all know the story of the Jews, right? Got stuck between, and God opened up the sea. But for Christians, miraculous deliverance, but also primary type of Christian baptism. Passing through water symbolizes death to the old life of sin and entry into new life in Christ. What is baptism? Same, it's a Jewish concept, mikveh, right? You go to the mikveh in one spiritual state and you come out different, right? So in the Bible, you're impure, you go to the mikveh, you come out pure. For conversion, mikveh is important. You go into the mikveh or the ocean, which is a kosher mikveh, not Jewish, you come out Jewish. So the water has a way to transform you. Okay, that has been the Jewish idea forever. For the Christian took it as it is, just call it baptism and not immersion in a mikveh. But for them, the way they read the story of the Exodus, yes, it happened, nice story, God opened up the sea, but the deeper meaning for us is that was the transformation of Jesus. Everyone who believed in Jesus and performed baptism became Christian. Has his life, a new life in Jesus Christ. And you can continue and read more, look at about the manna, for example, as we look at it as the food that sustained the Jews in the desert, and also for Christians, it's foreshadowing Jesus's as bread of life. Okay, so if the manna provided the Jews physical sustenance, Jesus provided the believers spiritual sustenance. Okay, so the bread that people eat during the communion connects them to Jesus, gives them this spiritual new life, just as he saved the life of the Israelites in the Exodus story. So you can keep reading it and more, but I just wanted you to start getting at least familiar with the theological Christian idea of typology. Reading the Old Testament, reading the Jewish Bible on one level, just as real stories. Okay, most of the books and the movies that were done in order to prove that the Exodus was a historical event are Christian movies. They put the money, they put all the effort in it. It's important for them to say that really happened. But if for us, the Jews, this is the ultimate story, that what turned us into the Jewish people, gave us the Torah, gave us the covenant with God, for them that was only first stage. That's why this is the Old Testament, and they have a New Testament. So when Moses got the Torah, when Moses established a covenant on behalf of the Jews with God after the Exodus, that was the Old Testament. Jesus came and replaced the Old Covenant, covenant and testament is the same thing, with a new one. Okay? So I know we didn't have enough time to explore it, but I hope that it gave you a little bit of a window or prism to look into Christian reading of the Bible. Okay? They never doubt the historicity, the truth of the stories are important, but they're only stage one. So we Jews are stuck in stage one. Christians move on. They have a New Testament. Okay, we still drive the old car. They moved on to the new thing. I didn't say it with any disrespect. It's just to understand the basics of this theology. I think I will end here. You all have these fascinating flyers. I mistakenly announced it last week like it would be today. So if anyone here expected to eat matzo ball soup today and didn't get it, sorry. But next week we'll have matzo ball soup, and the youth group wanted to take advantage of what we're doing to perform a very important mitzvah and raise money to Camp Jenny. I don't know how many of you heard of Camp Jenny, probably not many, but the Reform Jewish camp that kids from Florida go to is Camp Coleman in Georgia, in Cleveland, Georgia. Yes, Georgia has Cleveland. Okay, it's a beautiful camp. My kids still go there. The little one goes there. But they do, during Labor Day, they invite kids from poor families from Atlanta to Camp Coleman and have a beautiful long weekend for them. Kids from special needs.
It's a wonderful charity. This event next week is not only for adults and families and people, but a great charity and a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's for adults. The kids just get the money. But no, it's wonderful that they came up with an idea of raising money and giving us an opportunity for a real mitzvah. What did I forget? Why don't you talk about it? No, there is a reason for that.
I'm teaching a class on iPhone photography, like beginner's photography, how to take better photos on your iPhone.
Okay, so if you wonder why your grandchildren always criticize your pictures, you should have held it this way. And you keep reading that in the new iPhone, there are all these features that you don't even understand, and how to take full advantage of it show up for that. Is there other things that I cannot understand?
So what is the next session that you're going to do?
I don't know. Maybe later on. But I think that the comparative religion ran its course, at least for this year, and we'll think of other things that we want to do. So next week, matzah ball and other things, we'll talk, it will be interesting. Then photography, and happy Passover to all of you. Saturday night, those of you who celebrate twice, Sunday night as well. Good Yom to happy Passover.